So good morning to all of you. I'm going to talk about my research on ASIC data plane processor for wireless protocol processing. The outline of the presentation is we'll see what is data plane processing and its context in Beansuit platform. We'll see why ASIC is being chosen here to be implemented as data plane processor. Then we'll see how we have integrated this particular data plane processor ASIC into VFP-based programmable framework that we have currently. Then we'll propose an ASIC for multi-standard interleaving and de-interleaving. Next will be ASIC for MIMO MMSC detection, and then we'll conclude with conclusion and future work. The prominent contributions of this work is providing systematic framework and architecture for processor-centric baseband processing in Beansuit framework. So that includes strategy for efficient hardware and software partition, and also control logic and customization extension for ISA for ports access and memory partitioning. We also have proposed a ASIC for, as I explained before, for WiMAX and Wi-Fi compliant interleaving and de-interleaving processing. We have submitted a paper to ASIC conference. We have also developed a customizable application flow that can handle future multi-standard WiMAX processing scenarios. And finally, I have contributed for analysis of hardware-centric algorithm implementation on ASIC analysis and studying the bottlenecks and proposing new algorithms for detection. So normally when we refer to SoC architecture for communication systems, it is divided into two planes, control plane and data plane. So basically control plane handles tasks of managing the data flow and system synchronization, while the data plane manages the compute intensive tasks in the processing. So the diagram shows, for example, data plane handles audio, video processing. Control plane is basically consisting of main. Normally it is implemented through general purpose processor because it is very easily programmable, and control plane doesn't need to be very computationally intensive operations compliant. So both tighter integration of both of these planes is necessary to achieve the good performance and efficient architecture.
Your control plane is still implemented in hardware?
No. Here actually we have transferred some of the functionality of control plane into hardware. So that's why it is hardware assisted virtualization in Beansuit platform. So we have, for example, scheduling of the tasks. So it is being managed by VFP controller. So actually it is task of OS if it would not have been there. But some of these functionalities now into VFP platform. I'm just talking about the general SoC architecture here, not Beansuit architecture.
What is the VSP platform? I don't know what that is.
VFP is nothing but virtual flow pipeline. So it manages the flow between different processing engines, the data flow.
But that's the other way, that's the state machine, right?
Yeah.
That's still hardware, right?
Yeah, that is hardware. So some of the software functionality, OS functionality is being now transferred to hardware. Basically, it uses a lookup tables and accordingly manages the data flow.
General complaint, comment is, you can think of like why that should be in hardware, because typically it's done in software, that part, because very easily configurable and so on and so forth. You need to put in the hardware when you have a latency issue that you need certain latency.
Actually, in our context, we want to have runtime per packet configurability. So that is sort of possible only if we go for more efficient control plane processing, more efficient managing of the.
Okay, so you do have a latency issue in the control plane that you need to be.
Yes, that's why we have Beansuit virtualization. So here we see the data plane processing in Beansuit platform. So this diagram is basically depicting the layers in the platform. So we have virtualization layer, which is handled by VFP controller, and basically that forms the control plane. While the data plane is formed by a bus connected with processing engines. These processing engines are either ASIC, that is application specific integrated circuit, or ASIC, which is application specific instruction set processor. And the goal of my thesis was to make to design an ASIC which is compliant with this framework in particular. So as I explained before, the interconnects over here, they are not the physical interconnects, they are virtual interconnects, and these are managed by the control plane in runtime per packet basis. So why we have chosen ASIC? So this study has been done by a group at Anjuna University. So they have compared basically ASIC with all the processing options. So we can see that ASIC provides the best kind of trade-off between dedicated hardware and a general purpose programmable processor. So that's why we have chosen ASIC. Advantages: ASIC provides a good match between the functions needed by the embedded processing and the ISA. So normal general processor ISA is not efficient for performing complex, compute-intensive operations of embedded processing. So that's why we need ASIC. Also, it can provide flexible I/O and interface functionality.
Probably tough on is wondering what is ISA?
ISA is instruction set architecture. So basically, it's the processor instruction set and how it is implemented in the hardware. It needs much lesser design time as compared to ASIC because of the provision of the tools, and the way ISA is custom ISA is implemented is in slightly higher language than assembly level. So it is efficiently manageable for the designer. And also it offers the possibility of co-design of hardware and software. So at any point of time, if we think of migrating something from hardware to software or vice versa, it is made possible in ASIC. Disadvantages on the other hand are we can't compare the performance with ASIC in terms of area and power consumption. But on the other hand, ASIC is not programmable, so that as such we can sacrifice power and area for achieving programmability. And even if huge customization is performed, there are some limitations in the ASIC implementation, which I'll talk when I present the MIMO detection ASIC.
What is the cost trade-off for a typical product of this sort?
So normally, as we can see from the diagram here, this indicates the milliwatt per hour.
That's the power for a certain functionality, but what would be the comparative price between ASIC and ASIC?
It should be at least 2 times.
So can you give me an example of a commercial product which uses ASIC?
For example, the DVD set that what we have on TV.
DVD handset?
Yeah, not the handset. For set-top box. So set-top box. So they use Tensilica provided ASICs.
DVD.
I misspelled DVD actually. I meant set-top box. Set-top boxes. So they use ASICs, and also I think some of the baseband processing providing companies like I think NTT Docomo, they also are using ASICs
For base stations?
for base stations.
They actually do the reference design. They have now licensed their vendors for the mobile phones as well as for the base stations. I don't know whether they're using it or not.
Because I think architecturally this is suitable for higher power, little bit more expensive devices.
Not for the country.
Not for handheld.
Yeah.
But as you'll see here, it is easy to support complexity and as performance panels for this flexibility.
So how do we add?
So
I haven't explained about this. So this slide just depicts the architecture of Extensile X2 configurable processor. So we can see that there is a green part which is a customizable part which is added depending on our requirements, and the base execution pipeline is there which is provided by the Tensilica itself. So there is a possibility of having multiple pipelines in the base processor itself, but it really depends on the way we it really depends on the application requirements, whether we want to have a custom VLIW or baseline VLIW. How a custom instruction is added to ASIC. So this diagram depicts the addition of custom instruction. Basically, custom instruction adds a particular execution units that is added in the execute stage of the pipeline. And if the custom instruction needs new register file or new state registers are nothing but architecturally visible registers which can be used by Tensilica instruction extension language for writing the instructions.
So is the software programmable? I mean, in other words, when you customize the instruction?
Yeah, basically what I do is there is a specific language called Tensilica instruction extension. So we have to provide the functionality in that language. Then the tool will compile that particular functionality for particular base processing, particular baseline processor. And then when that processor is generated, we can write software which will use the customization feature.
I understand, but what happens in the hardware there? It writes to some status registers or somewhere? Which
It adds actually hardware to the base. It adds actually. We'll see in the later slide, I will explain how much hardware is added for custom instructions.
So what's the difference between the blue one and the orange?
The blue one is the base processor data path, and this is the orange one is the custom data path that we have added, custom instruction supporting hardware. So designing ASIC normally consists of two steps. First is choosing the baseline processor, and second is customization according to the requirement. The baseline processor designing needs to at the time of baseline processor design, we need to consider several parameters. Some of them are listed over here. So we have to consider what execution units we need, the pipeline length. For example, in Tensilica case, we have possibility of 5 to 7 pipelines. So we can choose the pipeline depending on our requirement or frequency requirement. Then we can have variable interfaces for different buses, like for PIF compatible with AXI, compatible with PLB. Then we have to think of the power clock frequency requirements depending on the application. And also in terms of performance, at the baseline itself, there is a possibility of having addition of co-processors suitable for DSP or floating point, or maybe, and also VLIW kind of implementation. So at the baseline itself, we can have a VLIW pipelines added. And also there is a possibility of having additional registers. So we have to think if we are going to suffer from memory latency issues. If we are, then we can have additional registers in order to avoid. So all these options are definitely given thought when we start designing of ASIC, and that's what we have done while starting.
If is an operation unit or?
If is instruction page. These are the pipeline stages. I have just depicted a example pipeline. So instruction page, register read is a pipeline stage, execution is a pipeline stage, and it continues. Memory write, register read. So it continues depending on the length of the pipeline.
So which one did you choose, 5 or 7?
I have chosen 5 because there was no particular requirement of high frequency or processing environment, and also in case of 7-stage pipeline, there is possibility if a branch misprediction happens, the latency is quite high.
Yeah. It is not a high frequency, high throughput. That's what you said. Your frequency will be still the same. You just basically you are using many stages of pipeline to increase the throughput.
Yes, but if you have more number of stages, the frequency of the processor can increase because we have basically short.
No, your throughput goes high. Frequency means your clock frequency will be still the same, right? Why do you do a pipeline? Because you want to get something done at every clock frequency,
So you still do, this is a reach machine, so you still do one cycle, one instruction per cycle, if you are sticking
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the baseline. He does slightly more because he does the more complex instructions, but the baseline has one instruction per cycle.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
why you do pipeline, but.
But if you have 7-stage pipelines, you can run it at a higher frequency, and then your mix will go up. So if you run it at 700 megahertz rather than 500, you have 700 megahertz rather than 500.
Right, so that's the throughput, that's one thing. I mean, you don't jack up the clock frequency, do you? You don't, you leave the clock frequency the same.
No, it goes
You
up.
jack it up?
It goes up.
It actually, when the processor generator generates the processor, it gives the maximum frequency possible. So for 7 stage, your frequency increases.
You
You put the
increase
maximum
the
frequency
frequency.
possible, and then you do add as many, pipeline stages needed, and your throughput will go high. Why should you keep it small?
But your throughput, supposedly goes high by increasing the clock rate. On the other hand, it all depends on your code. Your throughput may still be very high, like in the number of MIPS, but in the Python MIPS.
It will go up, but my point is, you don't run it at slower clock frequency, right?
No, so you.
You
pipeline-
run it at maximum whatever is possible by the hardware.
Different pipeline, number of pipelines will give you a different maximum frequency.
Yeah.
That's what it's.
Well, it depends how you combine, I mean, how.
So if you're running, let's say 45 nanometers, and if you have 5 pipeline stage, maximum clock frequency, suppose it will be 500 megahertz. If you have 7 pipeline stages, it will be 700 megahertz. Because the distances are shorter between the stages, and you do less at every stage. But then on the other hand, the price commits may go down because of the distribution of the branches, and then you flush out the pipeline.
Okay, I don't want to get involved, my last comment is, you can still go up at a higher frequency, keeping the combinational path smaller, right?
You can do that also.
It's totally independent of the pipeline stages that you have. But higher the pipeline stages, if you have to have the registers much nearer, that's when the clock frequency goes up. Right? Okay, we can-
I have a related question, like if you make a really complicated time structure, do you do it in one cycle or?
No. So it depends. So if it is involving multiple execution operations, it is multi-cycle instruction. So and we define schedule at what pipeline stage, what particular operands are ready
So
to be
you can
used or
assign pipeline
defined.
stages to, you are the architect of the project.
Yes,
yes?
I'm the architect of how the instruction is getting executed and where the flip-flops are added in the custom data path. So I'll decide at the time of designing that how it should be executed.
For that particular function,
Custom.
you have no control over the.
The baseline, I don't.
Baseline.
No, I don't have.
Pipeline stage.
No.
You don't have the control over the control pipeline stage. Is 5 or 7 and so on.
No.
You don't know what's happening there, right?
No, I
You only
don't.
click 5 or
Because
7.
basically it's a control.
It's control.
So
Control.
So there were, the goal is integration of ASIC-based P into Whimsical platform. So in this main aspect is to make ASIC compliant with the programmable framework that we have currently, and all the decisions, design decisions are taken in accordance with this goal. So for example, communications with other data plane engines, which may be ASIC or ASIC through VFD controller. For defining the strategy for communicating with that, we have kept the same framework outside of the ASIC, and it is ensured that the communication will be transparent to VFD, which is Virtual Flow Pipeline Controller. It won't know whether the underlying hardware is ASIC or it is ASIC. And also we have given careful thought for hardware and software partition, since we have now possibility of programming the processor. Also, definitely the context switching between different virtual tasks. We have thought about how we can make it more efficient, and definitely the I/O latency. We have added custom ports in order to achieve lesser I/O latency, optimized I/O latency. So I will explain what exactly we have done for that. And we have obviously we have had memory organization defined. We have also thought about 5 functions which can be suitable for ASIC implementation, and of course finally as analysis of finally achievable throughput on this kind of ASICs. So where do assets go into WinCTOR platform? So in WinCTOR platform, as we know from earlier presentations, normally the FUs, which is functional units, connected to a common bus, and all these FUs, they lie within a cluster, and the WinCTOR platform is basically clusters connected by AXI bus. So our ASICs actually go into the same place as ASIC, and the FU basically consists of the Tensilica ASIC that we have designed, and the rest of the logic will remain same as it was in ASIC. So we have augmented the processing functionality with interleaving, deinterleaving, and minor.
I didn't get it. That saying that functional unit. I know that's the processor which you program, but how do you get the other hardware?
The other hardware is still the same, existing.
No, I know, but
Provided
you have a
you-
separate chip for it, or where do you get it? I mean, how do you get it from?
We have designed.
We have designed.
We have designed.
We have designed. So basically,
No, I know you designed it, but it's like glue logic or a part of FPGA or what?
It's all one chip.
It's-
All this is supposed to be one chip.
yeah, this is all one chip. So we can do it on FPGA or
It won't fit
compatible
on
on ASIC or.
It's our own hardware, it's a blue logic.
Oh, it's a glue logic right
It's a
now.
blue logic.
Right now.
No,
Okay.
it's a blue logic from the perspective of tying up the Tensilica to the rest of the system. It's not glue in the usual sense that you just match up the different interfaces and so on. So this is the block that we keep repeating for all the different processing entities.
It can be imagined to be like sort of a socket.
Oh,
So we have all of these sockets ready where you can plug in either Tensilica based ASICs or maybe some hardware based engine or things like that. So these are sockets ready.
I understand.
And we didn't want to change those sockets. Like we want to make our processor compatible with those sockets. That was all.
But you have implemented this, right?
Yes.
How did you implement it? You put a glue logic there?
No, it's implemented in RTL, value of VHDL, and then whenever we go to FPGA, it's retargeted to FPGA.
So that's what I was asking. This is a part of FPGA. That's what
This particular design is not targeted to FPGA yet, for a number of reasons. We don't have the Tensilica
I
license for
understand.
FPGA.
But how about here? The Tensilica SCP is a chip by itself, right?
No.
So it's a core.
So
It's a core.
It's a core
It's a
one.
core.
Okay.
It's a core.
Now it start making sense.
We don't have license for it.
That's what.
Got it. Okay.
So custom ports. So as we can see, we have added custom input wires and export wires for communicating with VFP controller. And these wires can be read or written directly by the pipeline. So it's much faster as compared to going through processor interface. Then we have defined a custom FIFO interface, which is basically for writing the data to the output buffer. So processor will just dump the data on the interface and it will carry on processing. The data will move along to the FIFO, and there is some external module which will read the FIFO and write it to the output buffer. So processor won't spend time on the writing of the data. And there are two data RAMs. One is for processor memory, stack heap, interrupt vectors and all. Second is the user for input buffer and the register arm and data storing. All of these memories are written through, can be written through PIF. The software application flow. So there are main three functions. One function F, is for determining the processing parameters and allocating the required space into the memory. N function is for reading the input buffer and maybe control data or normal data. And the function G is for data processing. So depending on our requirement, we can replace or modify any of these functions. So for example, in order to support multiple flows for multiple standards for interleaving and deinterleaving, we just need to modify function G and function F. Rest of the flow will remain same. So this is kind of permitting modular design, modular development of the application. Okay, let's move to interleaving. Interleaver is supporting multiple standards, 802.11a, and that is Wi-Fi, and 802.16e or N, which is WiMAX. So if NCBPS, that is number of coded bits per symbol, form a block block in a memory, you can imagine that as a matrix with 16 columns, and rows equal to NCBPS by 16. Assume that the block is filled row-wise, then the two permutations for interleaving will be done like this. First permutation will transpose the bits from rows to columns, and second permutation is just the shuffling of the bits in inter-row and intra-column fashion. So the mathematical representation is shown below here.
I mean, you follow the standard, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what.
Yes.
Is that in the dot 11A and in the WiMAX is the same?
Yes.
Same interleaving?
Yeah, the strategy is same.
Strategy is same, but the colors.
The number of rows, like the NCBPS number will vary depending on the modulation scheme and standard.
Okay.
So it varies from 48 to 156 bits in a block.
Now, so you take input modulation scheme also dynamically changes. So do you take that as an input here for the what interleaving you're using?
Yes. So I determine in the software flow, I determine what
What
processing I'm going to
processing
carry
you're
out,
using, yeah.
and in the later functions I carry out the. So the main bottleneck in the algorithm is inefficiency of traditional C code for handling bits, because here we are shuffling the bits, and C is not. I mean, with the base ISA, we can't have operations on single bit. Either we'll operate on word or a byte of data. Right? So this is sort of drawback or bottleneck in this algorithm. So moving one bit will require loading data word containing that bit, mask a logic operation to mask bits, other bits than the intended bit. Then load the data of the destination index, store it somewhere so that we won't lose the bit which is going to be replaced with this bit. Logic operation to move to make the intended bit into correct index, and then storing of the data word into its location. So all these operations are performed for per bit. So this is a bottleneck. So how we can improve the performance? So the performance can be improved by the use of custom registers which will store the block of the data. These custom registers are added through Tensilica instruction extension language. And now my instructions, they will basically shuffle the data in the registers directly without going to memory for every bit. And plus, the shuffling will be carried out in the chunk of 32 bits simultaneously instead of carrying out bit by bit. So the transposing of a matrix, which was the first permutation in interleaving, it is done in one. It is completely avoided because instead of filling row wise and moving into columns, I'm directly writing in columns at the time of writing the block. So first permutation is avoided, and bit shuffling is now intra-register. So within rows, within the indexes of particular register, I can do the bit shuffling. So it's much more performance efficient.
So you developed a custom instruction
Yes.
to do the interleaving.
Yes.
Right?
I developed a custom instruction for example, filling out the matrix, carrying out the data shuffling, reading the matrix, and writing it to the output buffer.
But I thought the interleaving also takes inputs from the, I don't know, maybe in a higher level of the stack to see what modulation scheme you're doing. Right?
That-
So how do you communicate that to the customer?
So there is a custom instruction for determining the parameters. Okay, so I execute that instruction.
Okay.
Depending now I have the parameters in my mind, and depending on the parameters required, I carry out particular instructions.
Okay.
So you have some set of programs ready, right? One program for Wi-Fi, one program for WiMAX, and depending on the parameter, you select which program to execute.
Program means I have custom instruction. So basically, I execute custom instruction depending on my requirement.
Do you have one function that can follow different branches?
Yes.
Depending on. whether
So
you
branches
have-
basically, branches basically have custom instructions for doing that particular process. For example, in BPSK we have 48 bits, so only 2 columns will be filled. One custom instruction twice for filling the matrix. For example, WiMAX 64 QLM, we have to fill the entire matrix, which is 32 into 16 3 times. So fill the matrix, carry out processing, write the data, again fill, do the same.
So let me ask you another question. Probably, if you think you want to defer into that question, it's fine. How do you determine which modulation scheme you should use? You have a scheme.
So it is communicated by VFP controller to me.
Okay. So how do you determine there?
So there has to be the high level software that is setting up the connection, and then depending on what your measurements are and so on, you decide what kind of connection.
I mean, the reason I ask is a very critical in the cellular side. You know what do they do? There is a parameter known as the CQI, channel quality indicator. And you send the pilot, which is probably beacon here, and you get back, you compute the pilot power, what you've got, and below a threshold, above a threshold, then you go and map to QPSK or the 64.1 or whatever. And that's the CQI indicator gives you back that. So it's done all in hardware. Because if you want to go and up in the stack in the software, your latencies will be so high, your throughput will go down. So you may think about that, something like that you want to do.
This all can be done in physical layer. I don't think we even think about power layers. When he says power layer, he means really within the physical layer, but
Okay.
the control plane.
I mean, there's something to think.
So this is more like a control plane of the physical layer.
Right, exactly. And there's another thing they do, you can think about over time, is that the hybrid ARQ, right? I mean, it is done, if you go to the ARQ at a higher level, and which is typically done in the software world, the latency will be so high, your throughput will come down. So it's these are now part of the key standard also. We got to put that in. So think about this. I mean,
That kind of stuff will be done in hardware, but signal strength indication may typically go to software and might take milliseconds to take.
yeah, but that would affect your throughput.
I think it depends which level. They have multiple loops. There's a loop that goes to the power. There's a CQI loop which has to
Yeah, but with the WiMAX equipment, for example, it changes it every 100 milliseconds. At least the NEC box that we have, it doesn't change every.
No. I'll tell you this, in HSPA and LTE, there's a 10 millisecond frame, right? And they bring it down to HSPA is 2 millisecond frame. Each millisecond subframe, 2 millisecond subframe, there's a new CQI get computed.
But so even that should be doable in software, but not general purpose software, right, the instruction.
Yeah, and what we have seen is unless you bring it down to the hardware level, the latency is so high, it's just hard to beat.
So you do everything in hardware or you?
As much as possible, because you have to meet the throughput, and that this is the trade-off. What we see, first version of this, I mean, we had to meet like 14.4, 14.4 megabit, which is a 30 megabit download, right? There's no way you can do all these things in the hardware. I see the software and get that. I mean, it will work. You won't meet the spec. And going forward, LTE is talking about 100 megabit peak rate. I mean, it's all has to. So over time, it's coming down. The downside of this is more expensive, right? You have got to put a little more hardware, more expensive.
This is one area actually where this kind of ASIC makes sense because you don't really know where it is bounded between hardware and software. So like all these things, interleaver, we could do in the hardware as well.
Interleaver has to be done in hardware.
It is in the hardware. It's a specialized instruction, but there is actually the big question here is why do it as special instructions of ASIC rather than hardware. So one of the reasons is that, and Moki will go over that, is because of the future extensions. But one of these is also the thing that we are talking about because you want to plug in the.
Typically before HSPA, people never thought about doing hybrid ARQ or all those things at hardware level. These are always at the software level. They used to do it higher. But now throughput requirement is going up. It's difficult. The processor speed is not going up that high compared to just to meet them. And the hardware cost is going up. So you can afford to do it. Because even if you wanted to do it, because you have to do it in handset also, which is very, very cost sensitive. And you go to Vortex 6 or something like that, I mean, it goes a lot faster. You could do it. Go ahead.
So, total resources added for the algorithm acceleration were 11 custom instructions for data reading, bit shuffling, storing the data to the output queue interface, through output queue interface, and determining the parameters of processing times. 5 registers of 16-bit width each are also added, and 16 state registers. So what is state register? Again, it is the architecturally visible registers for the hardware device. So how much performance gain? So we have shown the speed up process, the application running on standard RISC. So the bottom numbers indicate the data size, the block data size. So we can see that the performance increases as the block size increases, the bit size, number of bits in a block increases. Because more the number of bits, C will be more and more inefficient. And so
But are you
definitely-
running it faster than the baseband level clock rate? I mean, all the way at 64 clock? I see.
Actually, I'm doing everything in cycle accurate simulation. So I'm just measuring cycles required for standard application and required for customized applications.
Okay, you don't have a throughput data to do it, or you don't
No,
have a target?
I satisfy the 54 Mbps requirement. With this speeder, we can run the processor as less as 30 megahertz to satisfy the throughput requirement. To satisfy 54 Mbps requirement.
And then you have to see also the round trip delay, because if you are doing it indoor and everything, your round trip delay is a lot less, then in a cellular, it's like it could be 10 kilometers. Your round trip delay would be a lot larger, so for that.
If he's not looking at the system levels.
You don't like it?
No, I know, I see.
Well, it's a good point.
Similarly, like interleaving, we have the interleaving algorithm, exactly opposite of interleaving. The only difference is there, in our order to avoid transposing, we fill the register matrix column wise. Here, we are filling it row wise in order to avoid transposing. So, and the shuffling is exactly opposite of interleaving. So why not just reuse the custom instructions? Because as I explained, the filling is register matrix filling is row wise here instead of column wise, and shuffling is exactly opposite. So we can't have the same instruction doing opposite work. And the rearrangement of bits is needed to make the block readable column wise. So this instruction was not there in interleaving. So this just explains the same logical understanding of the architecture for the instruction. This is the bits rearrangement instruction. So we can see that the 48 bits are there in 16 column registers, and we are moving it into columns. Like they are going to be moved from rows to columns, so that now we can have instruction which will just read one register and have 32 bits. So again, 11 custom instructions. We are sharing the register resources that were used for interleaving algorithm, so it will have some hardware saving. Again, nearly same performance gain as interleaving. The MIPS count. So we ran the simulations at 547 megahertz. We can see that we have observed that the CPI count almost stays at the level of 1.2 to 1.3, and the MIPS count is nearly 400 to 500 megahertz, mega operations per second. So
That's the clock rate.
actually, I made a mistake here. It should be
Yeah.
MIPS count.
Okay.
I made a mistake.
So let me ask you another question. Do you have any other blocks you're thinking to do this way, like FFT, FFT and others?
I have implemented my own
Okay, go ahead.
So one general question is, when you do this, you're comparing with RISC, but nobody is going to do it on RISC. The real comparison is with custom hardware on the same FPGA. So what is the trade-off in number of gates or power or speed relative to the best design you could do for this on in the same FPGA?
Actually, why we didn't do it, because basically it's comparison of completely two different aspects, because here we are comparing the programmability and performance.
No, I understand, but I think there are two sides to this. So you are gaining programmability, but you're losing something relative to a custom hardware. You're only comparing it with the processor, general purpose processor, but nobody is going to use that method. So the comparison is abstract. But I think here mostly people are using hardware.
Yes.
And now you are proposing this, which may be a good solution, but you need to show that the gate count is doubled or tripled, and somehow the development cost is less, it's more flexible. So that should be, I think. But are there previous students who did the same module in hardware?
Then you have to write the whole RTL for it. And
We don't have that function.
But you can have the approximate estimation, because you have the.
There are
count.
papers on implementing.
So what you should do is compare the total processor gate count comparing with the additional gate count that you have because of the tie.
Yeah, that I have
So
done.
you don't have the number that Ray is asking for, but you can get it from the numbers that you have. By comparing the total comparing with the just additional.
No, but
Because
for
your
that,
additional hardware is essentially the hardware for the special instructions. It's still not the streamlined hardware solution, but
The same thing, right? I mean,
it's not exactly the same.
But I think having
Yes,
done
sir.
this, as you've done it as a partition thing, the supplementary hardware plus the processor, right? But you should be able to do a very simple interleaver in hardware and then compare. I think that's a more interesting comparison.
But what Zoran is pointing out, compare the like, if you're gonna use Tensilic anyway for some other purpose, right? Compare just the overhead that you need for the tie in terms of space relative to the, whatever, you could get for hardware.
It will be the suboptimal hardware design.
But does somebody have, I mean, in the public domain, now there's somebody who has done interleaver?
You can go to Xilinx website.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I don't think it's so hard to do. I think you take some interleaver that somebody has tried and calibrated, compare. So I
Go to
think-
Xilinx website and you can download those and just you take a Vortex file or something, just run it through BST and you'll get the data that
You'll
is.
get both the speed and the number of gates out of that. So I think it's not very hard to do. I'm not suggesting doing it yourself. But that is the more important comparison, because if you're trying to convince your boss to use this method, they're not interested in what you can do with the CPU.
So the paper that you use as a reference for the audience, is that implemented in hardware or?
That is implemented in hardware. So
That's what you-
I can, yeah, I can get
Look
the.
up, I mean, anyway, you look up, I would suggest add it as an appendix or something if you can, just one page, because it could be quite important. That applies not only to this one, it was done MIMO, so again, we know more or less MIMO complexity in hardware, so.
We have used scheduling for efficient generation of hardware. So what is scheduling? It is just a way to tell density column instruction extension language compiler at what pipeline stage the operands should be used and at what stage of the pipeline operand should be defined. So if used properly, this can really save the hardware, because basically it will avoid the redundant copies of the state registers generated at each stage. So we'll see how much we have gained with the use of scheduling also. So here this diagram, this graph depicts the hardware area addition. So for example, here the left, the first graph shows how much it costed to include custom cores in the base processor. So we can see that it is around 12.2 gate addition over baseline processor of 65,000. For the baseline processor plus custom I/O, which now accounts for 7 gates, the gate addition was nearly as much as 98.4%. The division of the gate addition is shown there. So the blue indicates the total custom hardware, and then the colors indicate the state registers, gate count, decoding and mixing logic. With the use of scheduling, we are able to reduce the gate count by 20% almost. So it is now 81.72%.
Like, when you get these numbers, the 65,000 is corresponds to what here?
Yes.
What's the scale of this y-axis here? This is.
Okay, so
Right.
this is the number of gates that are added to the baseline processor, because we are basically augmenting the baseline processor for our application.
Okay.
So the baseline processor has 65,000 gates of area.
And this is the additional part?
Yeah, this is the addition that we are adding for our application requirement.
Okay, but that number is 10,000 over there.
This number? This is-
One means 10,000 kids. No,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
no,
12%.
yeah, what is 10,000?
So what does it mean before and after using scheduling?
So, before using scheduling means I have added instructions which were not using scheduling as defined by me. So they were using the base, the custom scheduling supplied by the TIE compiler. Now we define exactly at what stages the flip-flop should be put and when the operand should be written to the register file. So that basically reduces the.
So this is after your scheduling
Yes.
optimization?
Yeah, so the last is the afters.
So what was the main change in the yellow bar?
Yes, yes. But
Why did the blue increase and yellow go
because,
down?
yes, because if we use schedules, even though the gate count for state registers is decreased, there is some additional decoding and muxing logic that is being added to the processor in order to forward the.
So why would state register decrease sharply?
Because the architectural copies were generated redundantly in each stage before scheduling was defined, and now they are not generated redundantly. So basically, we put flip-flops. We avoid putting flip-flops in the stages. Okay? We
That
just
seems reasonable, but why would the blue one increase also?
because
Again,
the,
whenever you put up a draft, don't just put it and then move on to the next draft. You have to understand what each draft means, and sometimes they may not mean the right thing, but it's reasonable, but you have to explain it.
yes, the blue graph increase, the blue bar increases because the decoding and muxing logic now is more compared to basic without scheduling. For example, in normal instruction, we had use of the operands in the execute stage and defined it in the execute stage. But the architectural copy of the operand is not written until register write stage of the pipeline. Right? So, if we want to avoid that, we can generate the operand at the end of near to the RW stage of the pipeline. So we avoid flip-flops. But then we need to forward we need to have logic such that it is utilizing the operands in that particular stage. So I am moving the defining stage from 3 to 5. So the logic baseline processor provides logic for reading at number 3. If I am not using that logic, I have to have logic for using the operands at 5, and that is basically decoding and muxing logic. That's why it is increasing.
Is this bar supposed to be the total, the one on the...
The blue bar is supposed to be. This is the total.
But to my eye, the right-hand dark blue bar doesn't look like it's less than the sum of yellow plus everything. If you put
Yeah,
the
I understand what you are.
light blue on top and I had the yellow, it has gone above.
Somehow it's subtracted.
We don't
No,
know the
actually it
numbers.
is.
Numbers.
No, actually, I have the table, and I brought it to MATLAB, and I think it should.
You should check it because somebody visually finds this to be a problem. So if someone plotted your accounts like that, then you would not be happy that here's your savings account, here's your checking account, and total it's less.
I think I should have.
Check it out, check it out.
Yeah, I think I should have included the table also.
Individual number and
Yeah.
Table contest.
So let's move on to ASIC for MIMO MMC detection. So our goal is to have a flexible processor with variable number of receiving and transmitting antennas processing. So number can vary from 1 to 4 for receiving antennas, and for transmitting antennas also it can vary from 1 to 4. So our strategy was to implement a suitable algorithm that is optimized for hardware implementation on ASIC and compare performance and how much throughput we can achieve with the ASIC implementation. So we have chosen the algorithm and from a paper which was published in 2006, and it is one of the recent works for this area of MIMO MMC algorithms. This just shows the conceptual, the diagram of the MIMO MMS system. 2 receiving antennas, for example, and 2 transmitting and 3 receiving antennas, and the linear MMSC estimation is provided by that particular formula. The detection is nothing but the G matrix multiplied by the received Y vector. So the complexity of this algorithm is, we determined the complexity of this algorithm, and we found out that, for example, in 4x4, there are almost around 31,200 multiplications. Additions is nearly the same, and divisions are 208. So, and the throughput requirement is all the processing should be done in a single period, which is 4 microseconds. So, of course, in this algorithm, the bottleneck, as we can see, is nothing but the number of computations that are inherent in the algorithm. So, ASIC implementation. So, we have implemented the algorithm in several in several steps. So, we implemented the algorithm on standard RISC processor. Then we improved the performance by using 2-issue and 3-issue VLIW scheme. VLIW is nothing but very long instruction word scheme. Then we moved from floating point to fixed point implementation in order to get performance advantage, sacrificing the precision. Then we have used custom register files and using that particular register files for achieving 8-way SIMD, single instruction multiple data scheme, and simultaneously with 3-issue VLIW scheme. And finally, the last step was defining architecturally visible registers and implement 16 plus 8-way combined SIMD and 3-issue VLIW design. So architecturally visible registers were used in order to avoid the data movement to memory in the intermediate steps. So we can have the data that is used by custom instructions without again getting loading from memory and storing it back to memory. And several combinations of all these schemes we have experimented with, and we are going to provide the results.
Why would you do it in a hardware? I mean, why would you go through the type? Because these computations are fixed basically for a certain configuration of MIMO. So put it write your RTL for it and put it in that is the fastest implementation
Yes,
you get.
but then it won't have the flexibility.
What flexibility do you need? If it's a MIMO configuration is fixed, then you don't need much flexibility.
Flexibility in terms of processing, right? So there will be hardware dedicated hardware for 4x4 MIMO, dedicated hardware for 2x2 MIMO. So this avoids that. This will provide a unified solution for all.
It's only does, depending on the bandwidth usage.
Huh?
Depending on the bandwidth usage, number of carriers and so on.
Yeah, well, hopefully those are not changing. Oh, because you're yeah.
Any multi-standard.
Yeah.
One WiMAX.
Yeah. In your case, yeah.
So I just explained here example custom instructions and corresponding VLIW scheme. So for example, for multiplying two complex numbers, I defined a custom prototype which will group the instructions for complex number to complex number multiplications. So for example, here I have shown in the 4 multiplying instructions and 4 addition instructions are needed for multiplying two complex numbers. So this if I can implement a 3-issue VLIW where I can simultaneously do multiplying and addition operations, I will have nearly more than twice of the performance because load stores are also parallelized. So conceptual architecture will be this, where we have 3-issue VLIW, so multiply and add, they are simultaneously getting issued through pipelines, and the load store can also be done simultaneously. So basically it will improve the performance, and we'll see how much performance we gain by using this scheme in the later slides. Also, the aspect of VLIW is the performance improvements really depends on the compiler, efficient compiler, because it's the compiler who will check the instructions in the software window and decides what operations can be issued in the parallel way or what cannot be issued in the parallel way. So next was SIMD implementation. So basically here I use data registers that those are architecturally visible. So you can see a vector of 4 complex numbers is occupied in one register. Similarly, vector of 4 complex number is in register 2, and then 16 multiplications are done in one cycle, and 8 additions are done in one cycle. So the output can be operated in third cycle. So it is a huge performance improvement. But this implementation of SIMD scheme requires much more work than VLIW because it demands changes in the software as well as hardware. So that's the main difference. How much hardware was required? So we wrote complete in total 18 custom instructions. We have 32 multipliers, 16 shared and 16 non-shared. Or 40 adders were needed. Actually, this I recently found a way to decrease the number of idle count. So I haven't included that in presentation, but that will be in my future work. Then we are using 10 architecturally visible registers, which is each of 256-bit width. And also, since we are sharing many of the multipliers and other resources like registers, we need an explicit scheduling defined for each of the instruction to use these shared resources properly and not stall the processing. So with this, all these implementations, the multiplications, serial multiplications count went down to 2080. Floating multiplications were still there because they were performed in a loop, and independently they can't be parallelized. So the operation floating point multiplications remained same. Additions came down from 26,000 to 2,500. The computational speed up due to parallel multipliers was nearly 14.8, and speed up due to parallel adders was 10.2. And here we show the performance results. So we can see that on standard RISC, the application was taking almost 3 million cycles, and with the use of several VLIW and SIMD schemes and using state registers, we achieved the performance in 16,194 cycles. So that was the final solution that I choose for this particular algorithm. This graph depicts the performance gain, which is again the comparison with standard RISC application. So we can see that the use of fixed point nearly quadruples the gain. Then use of SIMD also nearly triples the gain of the without using that. So final solution was SIMD plus VLIW with shared and non-shared functions and use of integer divider. So that nearly over 7,000 cycles using integer divider. And for all these experiments, 16 processor customizations, I have analyzed the hardware requirement. So we can see that at some point, for example, at point 10, here we can see that the performance gain is nearly same as 0.9, but the hardware requirement is much more because it was combined 3-issue and VLIW and 2-issue VLIW schemes. So we just discarded that. We learned that it is not helpful in terms of performance as such. And also point 14, we can see that the gain in 14 is not very high compared to 13, but the area requirement is quite high because it uses custom tile for matrix verification. So if you have to have all the additional state registers for that. So that is not a feasible solution, given the performance gain was not
It looks like from 11 to 12 you don't add much, but you gain a lot.
in the hardware.
Yeah.
Yes. 11 to 12 we had nearly, yeah, quite a gain. Not gain is not that high, but the hardware.
What is that your access processor customization?
That is processor customizations like custom tile with some 3-issue VLIW plus SIMD or without 3-issue VLIW SIMD. So in my thesis I have provided a table for each of those configurations. What are the customizations? What is the hardware area? How much gain we are getting out of it? And how much frequency power was.
Yeah, there's the other stuff. I'm not seeing it here. You need the power.
Yeah, actually it is there in my thesis. I haven't included. I just included the additional gain from.
You know, the answer, that is the first criteria in the answer that you need to see. It's not the throughput comes second.
Actually, the reason I didn't include it in the presentation is because the Tensilica tool provides the power requirement only for the baseline option. It doesn't provide.
Oh, so if we add up, you don't
Yeah,
have.
it just provides the additional gain count obtained by hardware, but it won't provide.
Can
the-
estimate somehow, yeah.
It's just the estimation,
Yeah.
but even though estimation, it is only for the baseline option.
So do you know if there's a way of getting power estimates?
I mean, the way I think from hardware designer point of view will be the number of gates proportionally the power will increase. So that's
Well,
how I will think. But
The real,
I'm not.
real way of doing is CV squared F, and you have to know the activity level.
Yeah.
Keep it as a 10% and do it that way. I think that's what you would do.
Mhm.
Just take a board and connect your function. No, we don't have the RTL for this. That's
We
the-
don't have license for.
We don't have RTL for this because it's under the DFT.
You decide where you are, you have.
Like you have to buy it.
Then.
Short if they get the RTO license, estimate.
Yeah, yeah.
So they see it.
That is the.
So they give you encrypted code, that's it? For
No,
simulation
they
of-
give us the ISS score.
Oh,
You have to pay for the RTL.
Yeah. Then it's like, no chance, okay. And they give you some numbers on the, that's why they give you the baseline numbers. Because they have a typical implementation of that, and that's why you get. Yeah. So let's have another thesis and somebody write it up, the
Yeah,
Tectonic
the number of,
poster,
yeah.
right? And Tectonic has a lot of bells and whistles, you don't need all those stuff, just come up, and then we'll have all these numbers. We'll have.
We're looking around.
Similar experiments we repeated for 2x2 MIMO. We didn't repeat all the experiments because we have learned that some of the combinations are not really useful. So we have done 5 experiments and the same solution as 4x4 we have chosen for this, and the gain is around 110. The hardware area analysis for initially I implemented independently for 2x2 MIMO ASIC and 4x4 MIMO ASIC. And later on I combined the hardware for making it flexible to support all the combinations. So we can see that most of the resources and custom instructions are utilized for making it flexible. So the area, the number of gates is not the cumulative addition. It's just 18,000 over the addition of over the gate count of 4x4. If you want to lower the precision and get some advantage in terms of area, then I have also through experiments determined the gate count for reduced precision, which is 16-bit. So the gate count is nearly becoming 40% that of gate count with 32-bit precision. So the conclusion is we have proposed a design for ASIC compliant with VFP SoC framework. We have designed a data throughput compliant ASIC for multi-standard interleaving. The performance is ranging from 5x to 35x to that of standard RISC. And the performance varies from 530 PSK to 564 QAM. We have also studied the implementation of hardware-centric algorithm for MIMO application on ASIC. The design was implemented for flexible number of MR, which is receiving number of antennas, and MT, number of transmitting antennas. We get the nearly 180x improvement in the performance versus baseline RISC processor. The MIMO ASIC satisfies the throughput requirement of 6 subcarriers in 2x2 application. For other combinations, we propose to use a better matrix inversion algorithm so that we'll gain some more performance advantage and it will satisfy the demands of 4x4. Future work is integrating the custom ASICs into Vincida platform as using System C and System Verilog OS simulation environment. Then verify the interrupt and polling supporting schemes so that we can find out actual context switching delays in the processor. We also want to find more efficient algorithm for MIMO detection because we can see that we can't satisfy the demands of all the subcarriers in 4x4 and 2x2. And also we want to investigate additional 5 functions which are suitable for ASIC implementation. Thank you. If you have any questions.